ladies and gentlemen, a presentation by Syed Faraz Sahab. I'd leave it to you.
Okay, so caller mic is not here, so I'll have to hold that for 10, 15 minutes. So thank you very much, first of all, for 15 more minutes of Jeopardy with me. I'm going to share with you what you told us. So essentially, this is your insights, which which we have just compiled and are presenting to you in a manner that you start to understand the criticality of the challenges as emphasized upon by your own selves. So essentially, this presentation is going to be about the insights from the financial crime survey that we did primarily of the commercial and the microfinance banks in 2022. So we are going to present the results of those of that survey with you to you, and then obviously there are some insights that we have that we are going to share with you alongside. But the primary purpose of this presentation is to share the insights that you have provided to us. So essentially, this survey was participated by almost more than 75 bankers representing the compliance operations, business, and many other fraternities. And those personnel, I'm very glad that all those respondents did give their honest opinions, because the kind of results that we had does suggest that they have been very honest with their responses. So, but before I share the results of the survey, I would like to share our financial crime FATF compliance journey with you. You know, this is a trajectory that we have had over the last 14 years. So we plotted the growth, the journey since 2007 or 2008. And this has been a bumpy ride. We have had terrible times. All of you did put in relentless efforts. And because of that, obviously, we are finally out of the FATF gray list. And so it's essentially a lot of congratulations to you and a lot of clappings for each and everyone who is there in this room. But what I would like to emphasize upon is the number of years that we have been in the gray list versus the number of years we have been out of the gray list. That's the first message that I'd like to share with you. And the other one is the kind of frequency with which we have been in and out of the FATF gray list, and the fact that the time intensifies with over time. You know, obviously, as you can see, we have been in the financial crime list, in the gray list for 2 years. We have been out of the gray list for 2 years, and then obviously we have been in the gray list for 3 years and then 4 years. So essentially, you can see the progression in terms of the increase in the time that we are in the gray list. So this is a very important matter that we must understand. So essentially, as you saw Shahzad talking about that, and obviously Ori talking about that, all of us should remember that sustainability is the most important matter to be well attended to. The regulators, individual institutions, industries, government, all of us will have to be collaboratively doing work in this regard to make sure that we do not, we keep on pressing the accelerators and make sure that we are remaining compliant with FATF, and we do not end up in being in the gray list again. Because if you actually extrapolate the time, then we can talk about 5 or 6 more years, and essentially we would not want to end up like that. So now moving on to sharing some of the important messages of the financial crime survey. So we last conducted that survey in 2019. So the movement that you are seeing is from 2019 to 2022. So you can yourself see that the perceptions have significantly changed. There has been a downward shift in risk perceptions in almost each typology, ranging from financial crime, money laundering, to proliferation financing, everything. You know, so essentially, I'm very glad that this represents the kind of faith or trust that compliance heads have on the progression journey of their institutions. But at the same time, I would like to emphasize upon the fact that there is more work to do. Because if you look at the global averages for the percentage of high risks, that was not more than 10 to 15% respondents. That's the global average we're talking about. So if you're talking about a 29% compliance heads or 30% compliance heads saying that these risks are higher, there is a need for that to be gradually reducing from 29% to say 10 to 15%, not more than that, which means that we've got more work to do in these specific spaces. On the other hand, obviously, you can see, interestingly, people are now feeling that they are more subject to fraud risks. So as you can yourself see, the way in which we are having economic vulnerabilities and the way in which the economic crime rates are going up or are expected to go up. So the fraud risk perception is actually correlating with our new ways of living or our new or the adjustments to the way in which we are having the economic crisis now. Another very important message that I'd like to pass upon is the perceptional gap, the wider perceptional gap between the compliance and the business heads or business community. There is a very significant gap, and that gap needs to be bridged in terms of either more engagement between two of them, or perhaps there is there's a food for thought for some more work to be done to remediate any of the areas wherein one person feels that there is something to be done while it's not being done. So as you can yourself see, there are areas where compliance heads feel that the risk levels are higher, much higher, as compared to the business heads. And very interestingly, if you talk about these risks, terrorism financing and proliferation financing and sanctions, in these cases, almost 80+% of business heads were of the view that these risks are very high when the last compliance survey in 2019 was conducted. Now, only 14% of such people are saying that these are very high risks, which means that there is something that needs to be done in terms of creating the right kind of congruence of views between these two parts of the institution, okay? And there are areas where, interestingly, business heads feel that the risks are higher than the perspectives of the compliance heads. Now, those areas are money laundering and frauds and cybersecurity and tax evasion. So clearly, there's a need for more dialogue, more work, more remediation in some of these, if not all these areas. Okay, if now we talk about some of the challenges, top concerns for the banking community as far as financial crime risks are concerned. So now obviously this slide is self-explanatory. You can see that a lot of the data and technology and people top the concern chart, top the challenge chart. But this has not been the case the last time around as well. This has been the case the last time around as well, which is the fact that the importance of data has significantly increased as per the perceptions of compliance heads since the last time, because they now feel that data mining is more important to be able to optimize technology, and data mining is more important to be able to use that data in more systematic financial crime risk assessments and mitigation. So now compliance heads are aware of the importance of the data much more than the previous times. But more importantly, you can see that again there is a wider perception gap between compliance heads and business heads. So while 88% of compliance heads feel the data is extremely important, only 43% of business heads feel that data is more important. While more than 80% were of the view the data was important in 2018. So clearly, the importance of data, or probably the level of criticality attached to data, or the perception of data being a challenge, has now been reduced from 81% last time around to 43% this time around, which means that businesses have started to feel that they are now mining the data properly, while perhaps factually that's not the case. Giving you few more examples is the pace of regulatory change and board oversight. Look at the way in which compliance heads have started to feel comfortable in these areas. People are feeling that the pace of regulatory change is not that much as it was before. People are feeling that the board is more actively engaged now than before. Fine. But what is the assessment of the business heads? They feel that these areas do carry challenge even now. They are not agreeing with what compliance heads are saying. They are of the view that these continue to remain challenges for them. So this is perhaps the way the lens is being used by compliance head businesses. So there is a clear need for dialogue, engagement between these two parts of the institution, very clear need. Okay. Talking about investments now, we asked the question, how much of investment you did in what area? Meaning to say which areas were core parts of your institution, which core part of your institution did undergo investments. So clearly, laundry list is 4. Fine. One is technology optimization and technology upgrade. Second is resource induction. Third is training and capacity building, and so on and so forth. But very interestingly, the situation is that how many of us are able to understand the mechanics of the return on investments on these capital outflows? These are massive capital outflows, by the way. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars being spent every year. The question is the technology optimized to provide you the right kind of benefit? And another question is, are you able to devise the basis or the KPIs for those benefits to be translated? So the answers to those questions may have to be asked to by each and every one of you, But generally, there is a feeling that the technology and the other investments are not really optimized in terms of value that they render to the institution. Even the people productivity analysis are not being performed. So we never know whether people who we are having, whether they are skill-based or not skill-based, and even if they are skill-based, whether or not we would be able to attach the right kind of value, or whether we are able to acquire the right kind of value from those resources, okay? Now this is a very interesting slide because this sums up the state of readiness in your own view of the banking industry. This gives us some eye-opening facts and some eye-opening views. So 40% of financial crime of the respondents feel that their financial crime systems are in a steady state. Now, steady state means a lot, right? I mean, which basically means that your systems are running very well and your systems have been recalibrated and have been performing optimally, correct? Right? But quite strangely, 47% find space for improvement in financial crime technology with respect to holistic coverage of financial crime risks. Now, this is a fair level of fear, in the sense that we're talking about that the primary purpose for which we procured the technology is not being addressed, is because 47% of people feel that their financial crime risks are not being properly addressed. So now this is a very serious concern which has been identified by your own selves. Almost 23% of the respondents are of the view that majority of scenario and threshold monitoring is either at a very basic level or at basic level. And only 50% are of the view that those are at the intermediary level. So a lot of work needs to be done with regard to scenario and threshold setting, recalibration, adjustments, and monitoring. Because basic and very basic level of a state of preparedness is not something that we are targeting or we are aiming for. And talking about the validations, only 30% have said that there is some form of validation. 70% no validations. Out of that 30%, more than 50% are saying that it was a validation done internally within compliance. So no independent validations. So essentially, out of the total 100, only 14% is some form of independent validation, either by any of the independent firms or by internal audit. So this includes internal audit, by the way. So imagine the kind of capability that we need to create with respect to state of preparedness in this specific area. Now, some more facts for you. May I have your attention here, please? 70% of the compliance heads feel that either there is no use or very low use of artificial intelligence, advanced analytics, robotics, process automation, and various types of emerging technology. 70% themselves say that there is either no use or low use. And that could be a fact based on our own reviews and our own understanding. This could be a fact. 50%, one third, which is 33%, more than 33%, consider use of risk-based approach in alert disposition as very basic or basic. 50% of the respondents say that either there have not been any productivity analysis, or even if the productivity analysis has been performed, is either of a basic nature or very basic nature. And last but not the least, 50% consider financial crime risk assessment exercises to be either very basic or basic. So if we sum up this is a very important message. Without dynamism, without data integration in the financial crime risk assessments that are being done enterprise-wide, we cannot be able to say that those are holistic, those are meaningful, those are current. It means essentially that those are either very basic or basic, and that's what has been acknowledged by your own selves. Okay, few of our own thoughts and observations on how is financial crime risk landscape emerging, because I've got 5 minutes left only, which is fine. We'll manage, we'll do justice with those 5 minutes. So potential emerging financial crime risks. I actually see a very significant risk of debanking, financial exclusion, and more importantly, cash intensity. We are at 21% inclusion ratio compared to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Kenya, more than 50 to 70 to 90%, around 90%. We are having a cash in circulation ratio of 39% that has increased from 25% back in 2007, 2008. That's a massive increase already. With the economic vulnerabilities and uncertainties and the kind of different, the ways in which we see the reshaping of the economy being done, we feel that this debanking risk or cash or exclusion risk is going to get higher, and the cash intensity is going to grow bigger. Now, the second important point that I'd like to identify here is the demographics of the countries with which we have partnerships, trade partnerships, and we've got inflows. So we've got dependence, or probably maybe we've got more concentration with 4 countries, or 3 countries rather. China, so we've got import and export relationships. We've got Saudi Arabia and UAE, where we've got import and remittance relationships. We need to be watchful, very, very watchful. Trade and foreign remittances are very high-risk products. But on the other hand, obviously talking about the other ones, is we are seeing the risk of terrorism financing being at a very higher level as compared to the last year. We also see an increase in the economic crimes. We also feel that there could be more use of informal channels, and I think Malik Bostan talked about that more clearly than me. We also feel that there could be a change in the demographics of assets in which investments could be made and carry money laundering risks, essentially including properties, automobiles, antiques, paintings, gems and jewelry, etc., etc. We need to be watchful with respect to those properties. And then in trade, phantom shippings, over-invoicing, under-invoicing, related parties, all those sorts of things have to be very carefully viewed. So trade-based money laundering is something which is going to be a huge concern in the coming periods. But we should not close our eyes to corruption and the other easier ways of making money. So these are some of our views on the changing risk landscape. Digitization. People have been talking about digitization for long. so therefore I would not spend a lot of time. I'll just say this. There has been a 26% decrease in the use of branches in the last 3 to 4 years. This has been massive. This is massive. Essentially meaning that billions of transactions are now flowing to your ATMs, to your mobile banking, to your internet banking, and many more. So in the case of the mobile banking, it actually, as I see this, ATM mobile banking obviously has increased from 1% in 2016 to 28% in 2022, June 2022. From 1% composition to 28% composition. And by this time, we've got Rust as well. We've got 15 million Rust users now. And that's a lot, because Rust has just started, And Rust has got 10 million transactions worth, the value of transactions is 100 billion rupees. So this opens the entire financial crime risk to a very different types of delivery channel typology. So essentially meaning customers, products, delivery channels, geographies are now subjecting themselves to different types of risk profiles as we were witnessing before. Okay, now, what are the areas to be very focused upon? So in the case of financial crime risk assessment, we've got data-driven risk assessments, data-driven, linking outcomes to business decisions. No financial crime risk assessment exercise is complete without business buy-in and business integration. Comprehensive coverage of all typologies. We miss out on certain typologies. We start to focus on terrorism financing, then we give less focus on money laundering, and so on and so forth. Second is financial crime technology optimization. Validation is absolute must. If you do it independently, better. But validation is absolute must. You need to have dynamic technology optimization and reviews of your technology to give you the right kind of ROIs. Calculating ROI is critical. Without calculating ROI, you cannot convince yourself that your investments are yielding value. And then the use of artificial intelligence and robotics process automation is absolutely critical. Now, these are the things that we've talked about a lot. Information sharing within industry, intelligence sharings by LEAs and by the regulators. Obviously, we have been talking about public-private partnerships for data sharing. Aurangzeb has talked about Pakistan Banks Association project that should be resulting in KYC. We've been talking about that for quite some time. Let's see when it happens. And then the role of academia. This is absolutely critical. Please try and understand my point. You need to have a skill-based augmentation of resources. You cannot have only hands. You will have to have skilled hands to do the job. And in order to have that skill, you will need to operate at the very grassroots level. And last but not the least is the governance and people. So we need to have the strengthening of the first line of defense. Obviously, you need to make them aware. You need to train them. And then people capacity building and effective skill-based inductions. Now, these are just for your use. These are the areas that you yourself found out to be the areas of focus to work upon. So essentially, the first slide is about financial crime risk assessments. What are the things that you're not doing right at this juncture? So essentially, typology coverage, data-driven approach, systematic risk assessment, and linkage with business decisions. And most importantly, buy-in of business. A number of places we have seen that you have done the job very well, but nobody knows how you've done it, and nobody cares how you've done it, and nobody is willing to implement what you've done. So essentially, all of this has gone waste. And this is a literal sheer waste of time and resources because you're not being able to generate that kind of buy-in within the institution. The second is about how to create the culture. In this, I would like to emphasize upon one most important point, is the stringent undertaking of the monitoring of key compliance controls. Please do not underestimate the importance of this. I'll have to overemphasize the importance of this because this is the only way you could be able to create the right kind of culture and also create the right kind of accountability matrices. So these two things are critical. Identify who has done what wrong, at what point in time, and then have the right kind of accountability culture or accountability matrices to induce the culture. So, and the second is this, which is about specifics of what you could do right with respect to alert disposition and also threshold setting and threshold recalibrations, etc. So, so that's all from my side. I hope you liked it, because this is something that you told us, and I hope that there's some food for thought for you to be able to redesign your compliance and financial crime transformation journey. So thank you very much for your time, and I'm